variety of religious stories. We have stories written by Shakespeare that still influence us. Stories written by, who's the other guy? Plato, that still influence us. There's a variety of stories that we live on. But we can apply metaphors to any situation. So one of the more famous ones was Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson was a psychiatrist who lived here in Phoenix and did hypnosis as part of his psychiatric work. They tried to take his license, and they did take his license a couple times. I don't know, anyway, he got it back, and eventually the AMA said that under the right guidance, hypnosis could be useful for some people. So that was where they went. But anyway, an isomorphic metaphor is a metaphor that applies to the person's situation, but uses different symbology than what they're using. So in this one in particular, a gentleman came to him that wanted to lose weight, or had some issue with overeating or something. And so Milton knows that the guy gardens because he's been coming to him for a while, but everybody knows the guy. So he says, "Oh, you garden, don't you?" He says, "Yes." He said, "Well, I have a few plants myself." So there he is developing a rapport with the gentleman by saying that. So now they have something in common. But then he says, "And you know what I've noticed is that a tomato plant, you put a tomato plant in the most fertile soil, and it will still only absorb as many nutrients as it needs to grow healthy tomatoes." And this is somewhere in the story. But what he's talking to him about is how much food he eats. So it doesn't really matter whether the tomato is in a place that's that has just the right amount of food or an overabundant amount of food. It will only absorb just the right amount in order for it to do what it needs to do. Well, one thing in NLP that we practice is that things have to be useful. They don't have to be true. But if we can use them, then we go ahead and use them. So the fact is that if you over-fertilize a tomato plant, it'll die. But we weren't talking about that. We're talking about the fact that a tomato plant in a wide range of nutrient availability will still only produce just so many tomatoes, and just only grow so big. So that metaphor is isomorphic because it applies to the condition, and yet it doesn't actually refer to the condition. So the unconscious mind takes the information in and begins to process it. Whenever we hear a story or see a movie or anything like that, part of our mind, part of our unconscious, is looking at this story and saying, "Am I like that? Am I like that? Am I like that? Am I like that?" And all the different aspects of different characters and stories. So when we find one that says and does what we want it to, then we can help a person to direct themselves in the direction that we want them to go. But they're doing it themselves. Their unconscious mind is saying, "Yes, I'm like that, in a way that fits my situation." And we're smart enough to do that kind of stuff, and we do it. We do it regularly. So if we are looking at a situation and we're thinking, "You know what? I kind of understand that, because I'm kind of like that." And have you ever told someone a story thinking that they're going to get one message out of it and they get a different message? That's really fun. I've had that happen a few times. I'm talking to you about something and they're like, "Oh, I am so like that at work." And they're like the protagonist and the antagonist instead of the anyway. So that's what the metaphors are. And metaphors are interesting because metaphors do work on a different part of the brain than saying something outright does. If you say something outright, your left brain's going to process it because it's like being stated like a fact. Whereas if you tell a metaphor, it's more a right brain process. The right brain picks it up, and that's where things that are more ambiguous have more of an effect, is on the right brain. So that's the thing about ambiguity, is ambiguity gets the kind of creative part of us, kind of wakes it up and gets a little bit involved in trying to figure out what's actually going on, what's what certain meanings are. So if we have an ambiguity, then we have something to work with, we have something that can set our mind. Now, if we have a mathematical problem, or if you were to say, well, you know, there are 5 styles of women. What was that? There was somebody created some problem.
Yeah.
Was it like 8 types of
women?
women?
Carl.
Yeah, well, were there 8?
There was, 8 different types.
Okay, so there were 8 types of women.
Then there were mixed types. There's basic types and mixed types.
So, if you have 5 types, then that's a left brain phenomenon. The left brain's going to go, oh, and especially if they're ranked. So here's the sequence that they're in. They're in this sequence. They rank it this way. Now that's perfect for the left brain. Left brain loves that stuff. Eat it up. This is most important. This is next important. This is next important. Yes. Right brain doesn't want to deal with that. Right brain's like, oh, it's all like this. And the right brain's like, yes. They eat that. So when we're communicating, if we're going to communicate most effectively, we want to be able to speak to the different parts of the person's processing, the way that they process information. We want to be able to get the information we want in such a way that's going to have the maximum impact on it. What we're looking for is maximum leverage and minimum input. We don't necessarily want to go to an extreme with that. Although, if you could look at someone and go, shh, and it worked, you know, why not? Right?
That's why when you walk into a room, you smile. You know, sometimes you get one.
Sometimes you do, especially if it's a room with 3-year-olds.
Those are the best.
Yeah. Anyway, so we want to have the most impact with that because we're lazy, right? We don't want to have to talk for hours and hours. We want to just be able to say something and have people go, "Oh, you're a genius," or change their minds, or whatever it is. So we don't always want to. But that's what we're looking to do. So we use different styles, and the metaphor style is the style that relates most readily to the right brain because it's where their creative part kicks in, and they try and see how it applies to them and how it works and that sort of thing. So that's a really, really good piece of it to talk about. And anytime we use any of the ambiguities that we were talking about earlier, that's the same thing. The left brain might be listening, and then all of a sudden the right brain has to kick in and go, wait a minute, hold on a second, that sentence was all structured. And while the right brain's kicking in, trying to figure out what was going on with the sentence structure of that sentence and what the true meaning was, whatever's being said next just goes in. You don't have any defense, or you can't defend yourself because you're not really listening to it. But just because we're not listening to it doesn't mean we don't hear it. It doesn't mean our unconscious mind doesn't actually act on it. And that's the thing about the voice. The voice goes everywhere. So I could be talking to one person. I could be talking to a person who's really, 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 really happy with the way things are and wonderful and really, really glad to be here. I could be doing that. Or I could be talking to, to somebody else, and I can talk to. Here's the thing: if I have the tools right, I can talk to anyone in this room without looking at them. But their unconscious mind will get the message. They'll be like, "Oh, they're talking to me," and it'll just go in whatever it is I'm saying, even though I'm not saying it to them and I'm looking at them. So they don't have any defense. They can't really argue with it because it's not really being said to them directly. So they just absorb it.
So your leverage would be the fact that you know personal details about each individual?
No. All I have to know is the posture to communicate with their unconscious mind when I'm talking to them.
Because
Yeah, because that's what the report showed.